Okay, here we go. Aloha. What's up, YouTube? This looks like I'm live. I think this is going to go live on my phone here in a second. So, I want to chat with whoever might be here in this little live stream. Oops, I don't want that up. I am learning streaming software. But I've had this idea for a little while of I've been doing a lot of writing in the past few years, and a lot of thinking, a lot of writing, asking a lot of questions, and trying to put together the best answers that I could manage. And I have had this desire to share the things that I've been working on for a couple reasons. The first and probably the most important is that I feel like so much of what I've learned has been so unbelievably helpful for me. I guess you would say just in a general life sense, but maybe even particularly in a mental health sense. I am someone who is finishing up a master's degree in psychology right now, and since I began writing and working on what I hope will be a book one day, long story short, I don't want to get too long-winded about this, but basically, I've been wanting to share these things because they've been so helpful to me, and because as I'm working on them, I've found discussing the things that I've been writing about to be so useful. And so I had the idea for this avenue of just hopping on a stream and chatting about it, right? Which is intimidating to me, at least to start. But I figured that there's probably some value that could be added to others. And I also am looking forward to the opportunity to collectively think with a group of people who maybe share some of the same interests. And just like get the opportunity to hear, criticism to the ideas that I'm putting forward and alternative perspectives, and hear other people say, like, I've been thinking about this and I hadn't thought about what you said here, and that's helpful, and maybe there's this thing you're saying here, and I have something that I believe is more true to offer in its place. And so, I just on a whim just now before I went live, I thought that I would title the stream Learning Out Loud, or maybe have this be like a series of like learning out loud streams, which is a little bit cheesy, and I don't know if I will stick with it or not. I don't know. It just came to me. But stating that because I want to have more of a position of like, these are things that I'm thinking about and learning about and writing about. It's not exactly like a teaching session, but more this like collective thinking session. Anyways, I don't want to get too long-winded. Oh yes, the other idea from this too would be I'd want to come on, share something I've been writing about, hopefully like once a week, twice a week would be amazing. Just have like a little refined piece of writing that I've been doing, and then discuss it, and then hopefully at the end of the live stream do a little Q&A, or where people can offer questions or even offer criticisms, or have you thought about this idea, or have you read this book about that thing? Things along those lines. So anyways, I will get right into this. I doubt that there's going to be anybody on this stream right now, to be totally honest. But if there are any questions, okay, we got a few people actually. Oh, that's right. We got 4 people. Y'all can see I keep on forgetting that I'm sharing my desktop. I need to get used to that. Anyways, let's get into this, my resolutions that I have here, right? So I titled this stream, Reading These 12 Resolutions Every Morning is Changing My Life. The LOL learning out loud thing, right? So, oh my gosh, the chat's right here. Okay, great. So I wonder if I can see the chat over here too. I will learn about how to stream later, my friends. But I can scroll over here and look at the chat at least. But I have to expose all my viewership information. So great. Okay. Well, Josh Thomas, you're the man. Good evening in Switzerland. That's great. So I'm going to get into these resolutions that I have. And I must say that they are largely inspired by Jordan Peterson's work. He is someone, so he has a book called 12 Rules for Life, and I had these old affirmations is what I used to read every morning. And I sort of adapted what I used to have onto a lot of things that I learned from Jordan Peterson, so I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing them. Also, I'll give some shout outs. I'll read it all the way through, actually, and then I might explain certain sections where some of the ideas came from, because they're not all from me, but I'm most heavily borrowing from Jordan Peterson. You'll notice here at the bottom, that's right, I can highlight it. Look at me using a live stream screen share thing. So this is, I just was looking at that when I said that as well. That's from the, anyways, so here we go. These are going to be clunky to start, I'm sure, but eventually maybe they'll get a little bit less clunky, and that would be great. So these are things I read almost every morning, or as often as I can remember to do so. The first is tell the truth. Act in such a way that you can tell the truth about how you act. Embody love. Work daily towards the betterment of being. Hold on to hope. Believe in a better future iteration of reality. Find flow. Listen for and fall into alignment with the spirit that calls you towards the way. Be present. Pay attention to your mind, body, and spirit and those of others. Focus not on what you will do one day or haven't done in the past, but on what you are doing now. For now is the only time you have control over. Stay in the fight. Confront the world head on each day and continue to stumble slowly towards the light. Minimize regret. Do not practice what you do not want to become or avoid actions that you know you ought to take. Aim at better. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. Reduce unnecessary suffering. Make at least one thing better every place you go. Do not let tyrants torment others if you can make them stop. Take responsibility. Every second that passes is exploding with potential, and you have something important to offer the world. Be faithful with your immediate destiny so that you may be worthy of a greater long-term one. Assume a posture of gratitude. Find joy in the little things and be grateful in spite of your suffering. Be balanced. Live on the border of yin and yang, order and chaos, future and past, structure and freedom, compassion and judgment, love and truth. I resolve to act as if there is no greater aim than embodied truth in service of love. I will pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. I will make peace with where I am, but remain tenaciously motivated to fulfill my potential and live out my personal legend. Ooh, so that is that. Let me expose my statistics. Great, 4 people, amazing, and no more chats. Okay, I just wanted to check in before I kept going. I'll have to figure out. My streaming software wasn't letting me pull in my chat, so I just decided to go live when I scheduled it at 2:30. But I'll work out the kinks in the future. So for now, I just want to explain any things that might stand out to me as things that might not make sense if I were reading this for the first time, and then I will get out of here for the day. So tell the truth, act in such a way that you can tell the truth about how you act. This is the subheading of this point, of this resolution, is really just an embodiment of truth in your actions, right? So I think that there's such thing as like telling the truth in your words, and then also telling the truth in the way you act, and that would mean essentially attempting not to sin would probably be a good way to put it. Sin is... the word sin stems from the Greek word hamartia, and hamartia means to miss the mark. And so you could think of this idea of sin as being like, you know what you should do, you know what the target is. This, I think I forget if I said this because I practiced this earlier, and so now things that I've said are blending together in my mind. But right, so it's this Greek term. It's an archery term, missing the target, right? To miss the mark. So any time in life when you know that you have something that you should do or that you ought to do that you don't do, this is a time. This is what I would consider sin, essentially, right? And it's a lot more complicated than that. But so this idea of acting in such a way that you can tell the truth about how you act, I would even extend that to like acting, letting your actions be an embodiment of truth. And so when you know what you should do, taking that option as often as you can. 2 is embody love, work daily towards the betterment of being. I think that this is what love means, or at least the embodiment of love is to try and make things better in a way that makes things better for you, the people around you, the broader community, and the world as a whole. So I'll leave it at that. I think that that's what love is. Yes, essentially just trying to make. I've heard this definition before. The best in me working towards the best in you. So that's the idea, right? Betterment of being. It's nerve-wracking being on a live stream, but I think I'll get the hang of it pretty soon here. Hopefully pretty soon here. Hold on to hope. Believe in a better future iteration of reality. This is one that I added recently because sort of the rest of the things you're working towards in life don't matter if you don't have any hope, if you don't have a genuine belief that things could be better in the future. And it's also something to keep an ear out for amongst your friends. When you hear friends sound hopeless, it's a good point to, if you hear friends say things that make you think that they don't think things will get better eventually, it's a good time to check on your friends, because that is a sign of depression, at least. And so I would say a lot of times people just need to know that they can have support in times like that, and also that that just to be reminded that there is a reality in which things could be better in the future. I'll leave that for now. Find flow. Listen for and fall into alignment with the spirit that calls you towards the way. Now this has more verbiage that might need to be explained more fully. So find flow. This is it's sort of an integration of both ancient Eastern and ancient Western ideas. Flow is something that in the ancient Western world, or in the ancient Eastern world, there was a few different ways that it manifested. One is this idea of Zen, and this is just the state of, like, you could imagine it like this. Imagine that the way is the way that you should go towards in life, and this was called the Tao in the Eastern world. The foundational text of the Eastern world is the Tao Te Ching, and this is called it's the Book of the Way. And so it's the most ancient attempt that we have on record. It's one of the only books. It's older than, I think it's like one of the only books that we have that's older than the Bible too. And so it was this one of man's original attempts to, how would you put it? To find the proper way of being. And when I say it's older than the Bible, I mean that we have written record of it existing at an earlier date than we have written record of the Bible existing. And the only reason I would say that is just to point to how ancient it is, right? So it's this original attempt to orient oneself towards the way, the proper way of being. And what that is, that's a difficult thing to figure out. But both in the Eastern and the Western world, there's this idea that there is a spirit that calls you forward. In the Western world, it would be referred more explicitly as God. In the Eastern world, it would be referred to more explicitly as like the great oneness from which we all originate, would be a good way to put it. Anyways, so whether I'm not, regardless of, let's say, your faith beliefs, I think that this can be applied, is the point that I'm making here. You'll often find that if you quiet your mind, there's like a still small voice that is telling you what you should do. If you were purely looking at it from a psychological angle, you might refer to it as your conscience. Again, there's the framework for both the Western and the Eastern world, and I'm giving those frameworks too because those are my primary areas of study right now. I'm looking at ancient Eastern and ancient Western philosophical texts and religious texts, and trying to figure out where's the common ground that could be found, the balance that could be found, in a way that would help us all find deeper common ground, whether that's in my country, in the United States, whether that's across borders, across the world. So finding this common ground, these fundamental things that we all believe in, that we can unite around and get to a point where we don't feel like we all need to kill each other all the time. Because wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be a nice thing? So, so that's the basis of this, right? So I'm trying to give some context here, and hopefully it's semi-interesting. If not, I'll work on getting more succinct. But regardless of whether you have this idea of the great oneness, the universe that calls you forward, there's I think that's not a bad starting place to conceptualize these things at the very least. If you explicitly believe in God or the Holy Spirit, I have capitalized here the Spirit. I think that there is a spirit of something that is the most ideal, the greatest of greats, you could say, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings. All words to point towards the same thing, sort of. But this spirit of spirits, and this would be the spirit that embodies the way, the Tao, being the proper way of being. You could think of the way being like the embodiment of all of the highest ideals. You can think of love, truth, compassion, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control, generosity, things of these natures. You can think of the Holy Spirit, or the ideal of ideals, as the integration of all of these things, right? And so us as puny little humans, we would attempt to understand what the integration of all those things would be, and then attempt to embody it. And this would be the way. This would be the proper way of being. And the good news is that you'll never figure it out, and neither will I. And so that will be a never-ending game, as a way to put it. So that's fun. I'll move on from there. Long-winded, fine flow. But this idea, I was giving all of that, actually. I have to give this because it was all context for this idea I have of finding flow. I like to imagine something along the lines of like a leaf floating down a river. It also reminds me of this song from Wicked, which is a funny thing to bring up, but there's a song in that called Dancing Through Life, and it's the same idea. I'm only referring to the title. I don't really know like how the lyrics might apply, to be totally honest, but this idea of like finding flow, like a leaf floating down a river, like dancing through life. There's the structure and rigidity that is needed, and like discipline and making a plan and sticking to it and things along those lines. And I think that should be balanced properly with this going with the flow of life, with this like falling into flow. I'll leave it there. Be present. Pay attention to your mind, body, and spirit, and those of others. So I'll go into that first. Paying attention. I don't meditate every morning. I meditate frequently in the morning. Probably about 50% of the time in the past 6 months or so. And so I'd like to get that out, but I do it relatively consistently. And something that I notice is this having a meditation practice or a mindfulness practice. There's a lot of different types that you can have, but it's all centered on this idea of like paying attention, right? So you sit, and I would attempt to focus on my breath, quiet my mind, and then, or paying attention, you can even think of it as like noticing. So I'm noticing a thought that I have, and I'm running down it, and as soon as I'm noticing myself thinking, I'll pull it back to my breath, right? And then I'll notice a sensation. I'll notice that I'm feeling cold. I'll notice the gardening going on outside. I'll notice that there's a refrigerator on, whatever it is. And so I'll notice it, and it's sort of like a notice and let go, and notice and let go, and notice and let go, and notice and let go, until you can just be in this space of like general awareness. It's a good way to attempt to summarize it. Well, maybe not that good of a way, but is me attempting to summarize it. And so the utility of that is you're practicing paying attention and noticing things. That's what's going on there. And so the benefit from it is the application of that to your life outside of your meditation practice. I use air quotes. I don't know why. So when you're paying attention to what's going on throughout your day, your mind, right? You pay attention to the thoughts that you have. There's this idea, it's a Freudian idea of your id, your ego, and your superego. And I think it's a good framework to help think through your meditation practice. So, it's a good framework to use alongside your meditation practice. So you can conceptualize your id as things like hunger, drive for food, drive for sex, drive for when you're hot to cool down, when you're cold to warm up, sort of like basic bodily level impulses. Your ego is the place in which this is maybe even extrapolation, it's this idea is based in Freudian psychology. However, there's personal and adaptations to it, and adaptations others have made before me, but I'll keep going. So you got your id, right? You can think of this as base level impulses, body, things of that nature. Your ego is more your, you can think of this as the thoughts that you experience, and maybe even like feelings and emotions, and it's like the you that experiences those things. And I think typically we are in the state of our ego, where we're in the state where we're operating from our ego. Your superego is that which is outside. It's the you that's outside of you in a way. So it's the you that notices your thoughts. So when you're in flow, or when you're just talking to somebody, you're in this ego state. But sometimes right now I'm doing it where I'm talking to you, but I'm also noticing myself talking to you, the viewer, right? So it's kind of a weird thing to do, but your superego is that which notices your thoughts and emotions, right? And so what is that exactly? It's a strange thing. You might call this your spirit. You might call this your consciousness. There's probably more specific things that you could call it, but this idea of I think in meditation, what you're attempting to do a bit is to become more of the friend of the you that observes your thoughts, the you that observes your emotions, and be more capable of being aware of your ego and being in touch with your superego as you're going about your day. And so you have so an example of this. Leave comments if you're like, yo, what are you talking about, by the way? Because if you even if I am not able to respond now, if I can know what parts don't make sense that well, I can try and write them down and do a better job of explaining it later. But an example of something like this would be, I'm feeling anxious. This is a place where it really helped me. I started meditating originally to learn about and alleviate some anxiety. And so for a few different reasons, but that was a top one for sure. And so you might notice when you're anxious about something, you might be sitting somewhere, even right now. I'll try this. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, I'm anxious. I know I'm on a live stream. I haven't checked how many people in here. That's a little bit intimidating. There might be 5, there might be 50. There's probably 5. Should we check? Let's check. 11. Okay, 11 people have come in and come out. I'll check in on those comments in a bit. And then in the future, I'll have them up on this screen, so I won't have to do that. Anyway, so I'm noticing that I'm anxious, right? And so, and in any other time where you notice this feeling, you get to say, once you've noticed it, you get to question it. You get to say, okay, so why am I anxious? And so in this current setting, it's like, well, I'm live streaming on a platform. I don't know who's viewing me. It could be anybody in the world. People are going to watch this back at another time, and so I don't want to say something stupid. I don't want to forget what I'm talking about. I don't want to come across as dumb or all of the things you wouldn't want to come across as I can't think of any additional ones. Well, what else? Maybe insecure is another thing. Maybe you don't want to come across as arrogant or foolish or deceitful or things of that nature, right? And so if I notice that anxiety, then I can ask, why am I anxious? And then I can say, okay, well, maybe if I was better prepared for a stream like this next time around, then I wouldn't have to be anxious, right? So all of that to say, the better you get at observing that, the more that you can pay attention in life to your mind, your body, and your spirit. So paying attention to your body, that's useful. I think yoga. I did yoga this morning. I don't do yoga a lot, actually. I've probably done it maybe like 5 or 6 times in my life, approximately. But I did it this morning, and that's a good way to pay attention to your body. If another thing is like right now, my posture's not great, you could sit up. You can notice if you're not feeling well after you eat and attempt to change. Try something new when you're eating. Those are ways you can pay attention to your body, right? Pay attention to your mind. Maybe we could categorize as your explicit thoughts, paying attention to your spirit. That could be like, when you do something that doesn't feel right. It's like, why does that not feel right, actually? Why don't I feel good about that? And all of those, you're being present and paying attention so you can adjust your future decision making. That's the purpose of it. Focus not on what you will do one day or haven't done in the past, but on what you're doing now. For now is the only time you have control over. This is just a reminder in this being present idea to anxiety is worrying about the future, and regret is like being so focused on the past, and there's probably other things that fall into those categories too, right? But when you're focused on what you can do now, you can actually operate in a conscious way that makes things better. And anytime you're focusing on where you're worrying about the future, you're expending energy that could be better used in the present to help make the future better even. So I'll try and keep going through these a little bit quicker, but now is the only time you have control over. And I capitalize that as a reminder to be in the present moment, because now is the only time that exists, really. The future will exist and the past has already happened, but we're moving through this temporal dimension, and as far as we can tell, there's only one moment in time that we can have an effect on, that we have control over. And so I'm going to keep cruising, taking longer than I expected, but that's okay. Stay in the fight, confront the world head on each day, and continue to stumble slowly towards the light. This is just a reminder for me, like even when things are not going great for the day, let's say I didn't get up when I wanted to get up, and then I have my morning routine slated, but only got to half of it, and then I, let's even say, made like a bad decision. I ate something that I knew was not going to make me feel good, that I ate because I couldn't, how would you put it, stave off the impulse or the craving, and then I feel bad later, and it's like, oh, and this is maybe a cheesy example, but it's just coming to mind, so I'm using it. It's like, oh, like I don't feel good, and I made a bad decision, so I messed up the day, and I'll start again tomorrow. Where it's more of a reminder of like, stay in the fight, even if like sometimes I'll do that. I'll like not get up on time. It'll be like 10:30, and I'll like waste an hour on my phone. This is actually a more realistic example for me. Sleep in. It's 10:30. I meant to get up at 6:30. This happened to me yesterday, actually, is why it's so why I'm thinking about it. Got up at 6:30, got back in bed after a little bit, woke up at 10:30, spent a little bit of time on my phone, and then I'm like, oh, frick, that's not how I wanted my day to go, and I had been planning to practice a live stream like this. I got one practice in before, and there was the reminder for me at that point in time of the day, like 11:30, I was sitting here on this couch, and it was like, stay in the fight. It's words that have been echoing in my head ever since. They're a more recent addition to this resolutions thing. So, yeah, just when you're feeling down throughout the day, it's like, yo, stay in the fight. Kind of that like Rocky-esque, David Goggins-esque, something I learned well when I did half Ironman I did at the end of last year. When you have swam a mile and biked 50 miles and you're getting up to go run another 13, it's kind of just like, keep moving, keep moving. And so remembering that life is a race and more of a marathon in that sense as well, to continue moving, stay in the fight. That's the idea. And I even like this verbiage. This is something I borrowed from Jordan Peterson explicitly as well. This continue to stumble slowly towards the light. I think he said something along the lines of like the primary call to adventure in life is the stumbling uphill towards the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven. And what does that mean, right? Stumbling uphill. I think that the universe is geared towards entropy. So, and what that means is that things are perpetually falling apart. Matter and energy, more specifically, are perpetually breaking apart. And however, there are forces, gravity being one of them, but also it looks like consciousness being one of them, that assembles things that are breaking apart. And so I think that's why the word uphill is in there, right? Because you're stumbling uphill. It's not even like you're walking flat. You have to like work against the fabric of reality. You have to work against the nature of reality to bring the kingdom of heaven here to earth, right? For the sake of this phrase. And what that means, that can mean a lot of different things, I think, honestly. But one thing that could mean, I mean, at the most basic level is choosing to continue working towards betterment, the kingdom of heaven here on earth, choosing to make earth a bit less hellish and a bit more heavenly, you could say, a bit less terrible, and make things better. And so we'll get to that there in a second. Minimize regret. Do not practice what you do not want to become or avoid actions that you know you ought to take. Minimize regret. I think it was Bezos, right? Amazon Bezos. This is sort of borrowed from him. He said something along the lines of operate on a regret minimization framework. And, he's not everybody's favorite person, and he's not my favorite person either. However, he's one of the most successful people in the world now. Define success, blah, blah, blah. He's one of the richest people in the world, is a more precise set of words to use. And he just this idea of like, operate on a regret minimization framework. Think about what you're about to do. Think, and if you have two options in front of you, think which one would I regret less, and pick that one. And it's hard to go wrong doing that. And oftentimes that's going to involve taking risks more, I think, if you're honest, because it might. And the reason I would say that is that I think oftentimes people rarely forget the things they went up and out and did, but we oftentimes regret the things that we didn't do. In speaking for myself, I'm tortured by the fact that I don't post on YouTube more. It tortures me. And I think I would be a lot less tortured by posting crappy content on YouTube, because at least you're like getting up and out and going to do something, and so that's what I'm doing now, posting crappy content, and hopefully one day it's less crappy. Do not practice what you do not want to become, or avoid actions you know you ought to take. Do not practice what you do not want to become. It's just, don't do things that you don't want to be, is what I was going to say. Don't do things that make you somebody who you don't want to be. I think that we are the people that we spend our time around. That's an important thing to keep in mind. But I also think that we are what we do repeatedly. So if you want to be somebody who, if you don't want to be somebody, it's a better way to put it. If you don't want to be somebody who is, let's say addicted to substances, an alcoholic, or addicted to drugs or things of this nature, right? If you don't want to be that person, don't practice that over and over and over. If you don't want to be somebody who is overweight and never goes outside, then don't spend 4 days in a row eating pizza and cereal and not going outside. Terrible examples. I should think of better ones. I'm going to move on. Avoid actions you know you ought to take. Or avoid actions you know you ought to take, right? So it's don't do the things you know you shouldn't do. Do the things you know you should do. And things like that, like eating healthy, going to the gym. It's the basics things. Getting up when you should get up, going to bed when you should go to bed. I wrote something the other day that basically said like that how you spend your day is how you spend your life. I'm sure tons of people have said this before, but it was something I was noticing in that day. It's just like, don't focus on living a perfect life. Try and make the day you're living right now better. Because that's what you have control over, and how you spend your day is how you'll spend your life, how you spend your series of days. So something to keep in mind. Aim at better. That's not a bad transition to aim at better. Aim at better. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. I think particularly with social media nowadays, it's really easy for us to pull it open and just begin this comparing ourselves. It's something I do. I find myself comparing myself to the best person in every category in which I exist. And here's what I mean by this is I'm a personal trainer, and I care about taking care of my body and being I feel like as a personal trainer there should be an expectation of like this is something that you're a pretty high level in, I guess. And but I will compare myself to like the most elite of physically fit people, the most elite of personal trainers. I'm a musician, and I'll compare myself to the best drummers and the best guitarists, and because I play drums, I play guitar, I play a few different instruments, and I'll compare myself to the best in every category. I'll compare myself to someone who's more educated than me, or someone who has more money than me, or whatever it is, right? And so what can happen, and what does happen to me often, is I'm crippled by the proximity from between me and this person. But it's so unhelpful if you do this in every area of life, right? Because it's like, of course, you're not going to be first percentile fit and first percentile intelligent and first percentile wealthy and first percentile, what else do we want to be? Happy, first percentile having good friends, whatever the things are that we want. It's foolish to even play that game in the first place, right? And so that's what this rule is trying to push you away from. Is I think that you're going to be best situated to fulfill the maximum of your potential by comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. This also, by the way, is a Jordan Peterson line. So is the do not practice what you do not want to become. I'm just trying to give out shout out credits, where they should be. And so, yeah, just like shutting off the noise of all the comparison that can come, and just because it's not helpful, and then deciding to look at the miserable fool you are today and say, well, maybe I could be 1% less miserable fool tomorrow, and wouldn't that be kind of neat, and I think, as I mentioned, I work as a personal trainer. I think it's a really important place to apply to your physical fitness, because you might look at someone who's been like working out hard for the past 13 years, and then compare yourself to them, where it's like, yo, why would you even get into that game? It's foolish, essentially. I'll keep going because I thought this would be shorter, but here I am, still going. Does it say how long? No, it doesn't. Reduce unnecessary suffering. Make at least one thing better every place you go. Do not let tyrants torment others if you can make them stop. So there's two different points there. Reduce unnecessary suffering. I'll start there. I use the word unnecessary for that. One, because lots of wise people have for many, many years. But specifically, the word unnecessary, I think, is important to add there, because you don't want to reduce necessary suffering or helpful suffering even. And I think that there is a lot of suffering that can be helpful. Now, depending how you define suffering too, but I think that, well, yeah, like I did a 70.3 mile race, and the Ironman that I mentioned, right, at the end of the last year, and it was full of suffering, chuck-a-block full of suffering. I was in shambles. I was running as fast as I could for the last like 3 miles, and it was like a walking pace. My current roommate used to be neighbor, but my best friend from college, and who I'm living with now, we did this race together, and he was like walking next to me. We finished the last few miles together, and he was straight up walking next to me as I was running as fast as I could. So it was a type of suffering that was quite unpleasant, but was helpful and was beneficial. And as was the training, as is my training now. Although I have a hard time categorizing working out as suffering now because I mostly enjoy it. However, when you're starting out, you know, many of my clients would consider working out suffering, particularly when we start out. I think it's something you grow to enjoy a bit. But just to explain why I have that word unnecessary in there, because I do not think all suffering should be reduced necessarily. Now that's a deep philosophical conversation for another time. But one thing I'd say along those lines is that maybe a world with the potential for people to cause suffering in it could be better than a world that did not have that potential, because if there was no suffering, there would be no good. If there was no evil, there would be no good. Wouldn't exist. It just would be what was. Anyways, something maybe I'll talk about more another day. Make at least one thing better every place you go. This is a really good thing. I mean, I apply this most in my car, honestly. Just every time I get in and get out, I like take out a piece of trash or something like that. It's an old like Boy Scout camping rule. I remember it was something sort of this rule of like always leave the campsite better than you found it. I never did Boy Scouts, but my grandpa did. I think my grandpa was I don't know, my grandpa, and I think my dad did as well. But the two of them, you know, hammered that idea into our heads when we were growing up and going camping. And I think it's a really good idea of like, you know, you can't fix all the problems everywhere, and attempting to do so can be really intimidating, but you can make one thing better every place you go. And so like try that. And you know, you'll also notice it's nice when you notice other people who do this as well. There's sort of a connection or bond that's had over that. And an example might be if you're like out and somebody like picks up trash off the ground and throws it away. That's not theirs, right? It's just a sign that they're willing to put forth their energy to make things better, and they're willing to take responsibility for things that maybe aren't their fault, but that somebody has to take responsibility for in order for things to get better. And so that transitions to my next point. But the last thing is do not let tyrants torment others if you can make them stop. When you're growing up, you know, like if it's sort of like you can imagine this person to person, right? If you're like in junior high and high school and there's someone who's like bullying other people, and if you're in a position, this was something for me. So like I guess I'll tell a story about this, because why the heck not? You know, what are we doing here if I ain't gonna tell some stories? I got two more lines to get to, and then I'm gonna answer comments. But do not let tyrants torment others. I remember a time where I was in 8th grade, I think it was. There was a kid, big kid, had to be fair to him, had like a pretty tough go at life. But he was a bit of he was like an occasional bully, actually. I think he just was having one of those days. I don't know. He wasn't like going around terrorizing people all that often, to be totally honest. But one day, we're in the locker room. He's whipping a kid with a towel, you know, like how kids do that. You know, they twirl it up and whip each other. And there was a kid who was doing this too, small kid, skater kid, was a friend of mine, and he was just like swinging at him. I think he's gotten welts, and the kid had started crying, you know, and there's some amount of messing around and roughhousing with your friends when you're a young lad that seems reasonable. But you know, there's clearly a point also where it's like, whoa, okay, like chill out, you know. And I had been lucky enough to have had the opportunity. I had a friend who did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and my parents couldn't afford for me to do it, but they had this rule that like you could bring a buddy every time you go if you had a pass. So I would go to classes with him a lot, and it provided me the opportunity to have a basic enough level of fighting knowledge to be capable, right? So why I'm saying this is, don't let tyrants torment others if you can make them stop. I'd been lucky enough to have that experience so that I had the confidence to engage. And long story short, we got into a fight, broke up the conflict, and later even the vice principal and stuff came in and was like, "Hey, I thought I was so screwed. I was like, I'm gonna get grounded," and I would get grounded bad when I was a kid, but I had this opportunity and I stepped in and was rewarded for it by teachers later. And then, every time I would get in trouble, which I got in trouble plenty the rest of my junior high and high school life, I would get sent to the principal's office, or the vice principal's office, and she was very kind to me. And so whether it's I was trying to think of a personal example like that, or if it's in the sense of maybe not person to person, but in a governmental sense, which I guess at some point does become a person to person issue. But, whether you're talking about governments, whether you're talking about workplace, that's another good one, right? Don't let tyrants torment others if you can make them stop. If you're in a workplace and you have a boss that's just like being an asshole to everybody, you can, and you have the opportunity to step up and put yourself in a position to reduce the suffering that you and the others around you have to go through as a result of that, then I would say do it. Take responsibility. Every second that passes is exploding with potential, and you have something important to offer the world. Be faithful with your immediate destiny so that you may be worthy of a greater long-term one. It's funny, sometimes I read these, but I've read them so many times that I just like say them in my head. I'm not really reading them. Every second that passes is exploding with potential, and you have something important to offer the world. That's pretty self-explanatory, but I had this realization when I was in Bali recently. I lived in Bali for a little while, and I had this deep realization that just like every second is exploding with opportunity and potential, and like don't miss it, because I was sort of meditating on this idea of like life is so short, right? But also life is so long. It's quite a bit of time that we get here on this beautiful little blue ball in the eternal expanse of nothingness. And so it's quite a bit of time, and every second that passes there's something that you could be doing to make the world better or make it worse. And so I would say in that sense it's exploding with potential, and I believe that each person has something important to offer the world if they decided to bear the suffering and the bear the situation that fate has given them, you might say, and shoulder that and work through it, and even still provide something to the world that makes it better. And I heard Elon say something that I thought was Elon Musk. We're not on a first name basis. I don't know why I would say his name so casually, but you know who I'm talking about. If I say Elon, everybody knows who I'm talking about. He talked about this idea of either like finding something that you can do that provides a lot of gain to a few people, or a small amount of improvement to tons of people, and you can sort of have this like net good impact on the world. I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. And then be faithful with your immediate destiny so that you may be worthy of a greater long-term one. I think it's like I think there's a Bible verse about this as well. It's sort of like be faithful in the small things, so that you may be trusted with greater things. I think I sort of derive that from a Bible verse, although I'm not sure, so don't quote me on it. But I'm pretty sure that's the case. And I think of that as just like be faithful with like the day, be faithful with the minutes in front of you, because sometimes I find myself getting caught up in like falling short of my greater long-term destiny. And I think that in order to be worthy of that, you need to be somebody who manages and does well with your immediate destiny, I think is a fun way to put it. Assume a posture of gratitude. Find joy in the little things and be grateful in spite of your suffering. Pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to go too in depth an explanation. Um, Finding joy in the little things. I think that there's a lot that we take for granted, particularly in the United States, particularly in the Western world as a whole. That is really a miracle. The fact that there's so many people that can stack into all these cities and like not constantly be at each other's throats, and that, you know, the lights turn on and we have cars that take us everywhere, and people bring fossilized animals that have turned into fossilized oil, and they bring it up from deep within the earth and drive it over to us and chemically alter it so that we can pump it into our little machines that someone made us for us in a factory and drive to work. It's like, wow, you know, that's pretty cool. Like, that's a good thing. Oh, I think my camera died. Yeah, let me grab another battery real quick. Okay, I think it'll come back. Anyways, if it doesn't, I'll just keep on talking. Although I think it will. Beautiful. Yeah, just be grateful. Pet a dog, you know, hug your mom. Take a breath of fresh air outside. If you're healthy, man, be really grateful for that, because, you know, you're lucky. When your mind's healthy, when your body's healthy, when one of the two is, you know, yeah, it's, everybody wants everything until they're sick, and then they want one thing, right? People have said something along the lines of that. And, yeah, when you're not sick, you know, be like, woohoo, hooray, that's great. Be balanced. Live on the border of yin and yang, order and chaos, future and past, structure and freedom, compassion and judgment, love and truth. Oof, I won't explain this one too much because it would take so long. But yin and yang, this is this idea of order and chaos, right? Ancient Eastern idea. We got a little ring there, if you can see it. Kind of fun. It's a reminder for me just to like attempt to be balanced, being balanced in the future and past, right? That's being in the present moment. In structure and freedom, that's sort of this idea of like discipline versus flow is another way to put it. Might even be a better way to put it. I might change that in there. Rewrote these just recently because I knew I'd be sharing them. But discipline and flow is a good one because it's sort of that like, yeah, structure and freedom. Give yourself time to succeed in an organized manner, and then give yourself time to either be like creative in a less organized manner, or just relax, you know, freedom and things of that nature. Compassion and judgment. Ooh, judgment, taboo word. I think it's an important one, actually, and it sort of goes along with love and truth as well, right? Judgment is, you can't think that anything's true without making a judgment on it, right? It's like, is this lens cap black? It's like, well, yeah, if you agree that it's black, then you're making a judgment about it, right? And so judgment is really useful. I think it's demonized excessively in our culture today, and maybe not without cause as well, because an excess of judgment, only judgment with no compassion, is like the clanging of cymbals instead of listening to a symphony. Sort of referencing a Bible verse there too, interestingly enough. It just came to mind. But what does that mean, right? Like love, compassion, that's how judgment can be overwhelming if you're only speaking truth with no love, because sometimes the truth can hurt, that's for sure. If you don't have a little bit of love to go along with the truth, then it mostly just can hurt people, and that's not helpful. You know, if you come to somebody who is ruining their life by being dishonest with everyone around them, and being dishonest with themselves, and let's see, not getting up and going to bed at the times that they should, putting up walls in all of their relationships, not properly managing their relationship with drugs or alcohol. Drugs and alcohol. Alcohol is a drug. You could just say drugs, but What are some other important dimensions? Yeah, relationships, not being physically healthy, not being mentally healthy, not being spiritually healthy, things along those lines, right? If someone's really doing that, and then you come in and you're like, you dumb piece of garbage, you are making things worse for yourself. You're so stupid. You're lying to people. If you just came in and railed them, and even if it was all true, but it didn't come from a place of love, it's like that doesn't help. That doesn't make anything better. Easy on that. And so, on the other hand, if somebody was, let's say, keep the same scenario, and you came in and you're just like, oh, life's so hard, and I feel for you, and I love you. And if you only gave compassion, the point I'm making here, right, is sometimes you need a little bit of both of those, and you see that as it's an archetypal thing you see from mothers are often more compassionate, right? And so one of the byproducts of being too compassionate without the imposition of structure is that you raise children who are either soft, they never get out of the nest, they I hear people talking outside. I'll try to ignore it and keep going. Those are the things, right? I think I'm kind of beating a dead horse here. I'm going to keep on going. But yes, compassion and judgment. We know you can understand why you might need compassion and judgment, love and truth. It's really the same thing. The last part of this is, it's getting hot in here. Sheesh. I need to start these earlier in the day. I resolve to act as if there is no greater aim than embodied truth in service of love. I will pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. I will make peace with where I am, but remain tenaciously motivated to fulfill my potential and live out my personal legend. I really love this idea of there's no greater aim than embodied truth in service of love. It seems to me that of all the virtues that there are, love is the highest. There are Bible verses that might say I think, well, maybe might say is the proper version. I'm pretty sure there's a Bible verse that says God is love. There's also, and in the same way, in many Eastern beliefs as well, it's the same belief that God is love. Some people might say, love is all, the universe is love, things of this nature. But I think that this is a relatively universal truth. Is why I belabor the point of speaking to all the areas where this is coming from, right? So regardless of your belief system, it seems to me we can all find common ground in love being a good thing, if not love being the highest of all things, and embodied truth in service of love. So I think like not only truth in speech, but embodiment of truth, acted out truth. That's if we go up to that first idea up here, like acting in truth. I think that doing that or attempting to do that, right? Because you can't do that. Nobody can do that. Nobody can embody truth completely in service of love completely all the time. Won't work, right? But attempting to do this, I think, is something that you can. I think it's an aim that you can shoot for, that you can aim for, and that you can have peace about. Like, well, I can't think of anything better to do than that, so I'm gonna like try and do that, and see what happens. Basically, it's really what I'm hoping to do with these live streams as well. It's like attempt to share truth to the degree that I can find it, and also like be aided in this process by people watching. And tomorrow this Streamlabs, or not tomorrow, but the next time I stream, my little broadcasting system, it was malfunctioning on me, but I'll have the whole chat here, so we'll be able to do a little bit more of like a live talk around that. And I think I'll typically be talking way shorter, way less than I have today. I'm shocked this has gone so long. But this is the primary purpose, right? Sort of for my life, but also for these live streams as well, is to find truth to the degree that I can, embody it to the degree that I can, and then use those things to act in service of love. And love is being like the betterment of all being, you could say. Loving your neighbor, loving yourself, loving God, loving the highest of all things that there is. I will pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. I think meaning is an instinct that tells you when you're properly oriented. So when you notice when something feels meaningful, it's like, yep, you're like looking in the right spot. And it's really it's really deeply biologically and psychologically seated in your mind. This what I guess some scientists would refer to as the instinct for meaning. What is expedient? That's just what is like short-term gratifying. So pursuing what is meaningful instead of that. I will make peace with where I am. I have that there just to be like, yeah, well, I think it's something you have to do even to begin moving in a better direction, is make peace with where you are, but remain tenaciously motivated to fulfill my potential and live out my personal legend. And I use those words too. It's not even like be successful, right? It's not even like figure it all out. It's more to fulfill your potential. Like there's you, there's the life that you have in front of you, and this is how much, if you did everything perfect, this is how much you could move to. Such a bad example, but it's right. It's I'm terrible explanation, but it's just like fulfilling as much of that as you can manage. That's the idea. And then this idea of the personal legend, this comes from the book The Alchemist. I would really, really highly recommend it. But it basically is this idea that everybody has a fate, everybody has a destiny, you can even think of it as everybody has a set of problems that bother them. And that's sort of like how your fate and destiny is thrust onto you, is there's things that bother you, that things that present themselves to you as in need of repair. And so if you ever just like stop for a day and pause and look around your life, maybe take out a piece of pen and paper and think through your life and notice the things that present themselves to you as in need of repair. And then you write them down. And I think that's like your fate. I think that's your personal legend. To use the alchemical, it's not alchemical, but the word from The Alchemist that's used in there. It's a book that just stuck with me. So I decided to write that there to remember all of the context too, to instead of using like my destiny or my just leave it at fulfill my potential, remind myself of the beauty of that story, and the feeling I felt when I finished it of being like, okay, yes, this is the primary call to adventure. This is like the purpose in life, is to determine what problems present themselves to you as in need of repair, and like do your best to fix them. And then you need to do that like with your room, and then with like your body. Even if you notice things about your body that are in need of repair, like attempt to repair them, and then with your mind, and then with your immediate environment, that being, your room, and then your house, and then your car, and then your relationships, and then with your roommates, and then with your girlfriend or boyfriend or significant other, and then with your family, and then with your community, and then with your nation, and then with the world. And I think like that's how you fulfill your personal legend. That's how you live your destiny. So I'm going to come over here, exposing myself. 35 views. Honestly, thought it could be a lot worse. Okay, Josh Thomas just on top of it. Did you get personal legend from The Alchemist? I did indeed. High hope. You're the best potential future. That's funny. Okay, so this is probably, nope, that doesn't work. Is that just like, this doesn't matter at all. Anyways, so exposing, not so bad. We'll see how this goes eventually. One day I'll need to figure out how to have this chat without exposing all of my info, but I have no idea why this popped up on my live, but I'm here. Oh, amazing, Pumpkin Soul. It might be because it's my first one. I wonder if they like pump it out to people. It's like, oh, this person's live streaming for the first time. Isn't that kind of cool? An hour. I can't believe it's been that long. I got to get off of here. I found some people don't like the word hope because it sounds like something that is made up just for us to lean on. I like to define hope as the best potential future so it remains real. I like that. I would even say, I love that. I belief in a better future and iteration of reality. It's interesting. We're using similar words here. I put believe there, because we can know conceptually, right, that there's a better future iteration of reality, or the words you used I liked as well, the best potential future. We can know cognitively that this is something that's real, but I'll just leave this here. But belief in it is what matters, and I would say belief would be best defined as that which you act as if it's true. And so sort of like believing in a sense of like act as if there is a better potential future iteration of reality. Yeah. Pertaining to 6 and 7, I found over the last couple years, I spend just as much energy worrying about how I'm not doing what I should be doing as I do actually doing what I should be doing. Yeah, man. I probably spend more, or maybe about the same, but fair. Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably about the same amount of time worrying about how I'm not doing what I should be doing as I do actually doing what I should be doing. That's great. Personal legend is from The Alchemist, indeed. Okay, that is it. I can't believe this went so long. We got the first one done. I hope to continue putting out 1 to 2 of these a week, and just continue writing and chatting about it. I will improve my streaming setup and be better at responding to things in real time once I get this Streamlabs. Just for some reason, Streamlabs said you have to wait 24 hours to stream to a connected account, and I'd already put up a little timer on here saying I was going to go live at 2:30. So, thanks for dropping in. This is, let me get off this so I don't have to keep exposing myself. Yeah, I appreciate you dropping in onto a live stream. I haven't really been posting for years. So the fact that anybody hops in is like, wow, very cool. Hopefully people will watch this back, and when you do watch it back, if there's any questions you had about it, drop it, and I plan to try and share a little bit about what I've been learning recently, maybe answer one explicit question that I'd done a little bit of thinking about, and then do a live Q&A at the end of these if we ever get to a point where there are people with questions at the end of them. And I think that is a likely outcome if I continue to stream. So thank you for watching. Appreciate y'all. I hope that some of this has been helpful to you and that you're able to make your life suck a little bit less as a result from listening. So have a lovely day.